Want to see something super funny? So you see that this just popped up right there, right? That is because I'm currently recording. If we were to go back right here, this is I think this is a clip of Vanestra meeting Yoda that I was going to use in like a video edit later on. After this clip, every single one of these is an attempt to talk about the final episode of The Acolyte. I'm talking, some of these are 9 minutes. I think that's only like three. That's another three. That's probably around six. That's around 12. That's around two. That's around eight. Yo, we were going through it trying to talk about this freaking finale. I think this was my longest one, which is 15 minutes and four at 4 seconds. And the more and more I was recording, like last night, I thought I was gonna upload the final review for the final episode, but after going through all of this last night, because it's time stamped, like 7 of the 16 of 2024. After attempting 16 times and failing, I think we have arrived at the conclusion that I don't particularly like this show. I tried my best to give it a go. But if I was to break it down, I would say that this show for me is literally split through the middle. I think there are around 5 episodes of this show that just don't work for me. I'm talking tone wise, story wise, acting wise. And then there are 3 episodes that do work for me. The episodes that do work for me would be 4, 5, and 6, which is the episode Night, followed by Day, followed by I can't remember what episode 6 is called, but it's essentially the one where they're both on the water planet, and it's all Sith sexy time. Looking at this show as a whole, I think it introduces some interesting concepts, even if it kind of muddies the water a bit in regards to how those concepts fit in to the overall narrative. Like the idea behind the twins being beings that were essentially created on a force nexus and needing and requiring the force nexus's power in order to create those twins is kind of like, we're kind of running a prototype experiment to see whether or not we're able to create the chosen one later on down the line. And there's contention with people about, oh my god, it dilutes Anakin. It really doesn't. um the idea behind the twins is essentially we need this entire planet's virgins in order to do this one thing, whereas Anakin Skywalker is the virgins. Wherever he goes, he kind of breaks the force around him because he is the force nexus. So that really never bugged me once I kind of figured out the more or less explanation behind that. But it introduces certain story elements that I really feel as though don't get answered in any way, shape, or form. And what I mean by that is the idea behind the twins. Okay, we know how they're created, but then we still don't get an explanation as to their uniqueness. Like we see when the mother is turning into a smoke monster that I believe it was May began to disappear. What does that mean? Never fucking explained. Did we finally get an answer as to whether or not Kymer is a Sith Lord? Like he works under Plagueis? Never explained. Even though we get Plagueis in this episode where he gets like a really short cameo, it's not explained whether or not he's there to kill Kymer because he's essentially masquerading as a Sith, whether or not they're working together, whether or not, there's some type of experiment that he's essentially doing like off on the side somewhere and Kymer just kind of factors into that experiment. Nothing. No explanation in regards to that in any way, shape, and form. We kind of end up in the same situation that we did at the beginning of the series, which is, as I called it in one of my previous videos, the worst cover up in galactic history, is essentially resolved with a bigger and stupider cover up, which continues to the trend of the Jedi being. I know a lot of people are like, the Jedi are good, but this series is really ham fisted the fact that the Jedi is just like this really, really flawed and broken order. I kind of feel as though there was a more subtle way to kind of do it. I think that the second cover up is better than the first cover up, where Venestra essentially places the entire situation and its collapse on Soul, and then has Soul be the scapegoat for getting the Jedi out of scrutiny to the rest of basically the Senate. That cover up makes a lot more sense because it kind of shows the Jedi playing the political game instead of being essentially the virtuous defenders. They're more worried about their image and how the other senators will essentially see them than they are about upholding some type of order or law. And that could factor into down the line them basically becoming puppets of the Senate in people's eyes instead of defenders of like galactic peace. So I give it props that the second cover up was better than the first one, but I still think the first cover up was exceedingly dumb. I also think that there are certain story hints and points that could have been fleshed out a whole lot better in regards to characters. Um I can't remember his name, but he's the Padawan. I really feel as though we should have gotten more from him as to why he chose to take the Baresh vow and basically go into a forced meditation for 10 years. When you see him at the end of this episode, when he goes back to Coruscant, and however long it takes for him to finally become a knight, he immediately goes to that planet and enters a meditative state for 10 years with the Force. So I kind of wish we'd gotten more into his mindset post the situation. Of course, with the Wookiee, you kind of have to understand outside the show lore, such as the idea behind Mad Claws and the fact that when a Wookiee uses his claws, it's seen as a high sign of dishonor, and that Wookiee has to isolate himself from everyone basically because he's now unclean. Him being mind controlled and using his claws was like this emotional thing for him. It's one of the reasons why I really like the shot of him being on the ship where he looks really devastated because he's like, yo, like, I never intended, I was used. And then he goes off and he goes on his Baresh vow. I wish we kind of spent more time in the backstories going over the reasons why these characters more or less not only fell out with each other, but went down their separate paths of exile. Um, Moving on beyond that, I don't know. I'm not really a fan of the way in which they resolve the twin story, which was, you guys had more than enough time for everybody to get the hell out of there, but they kind of also ham-fisted the whole and I've always said this about Star Wars, I really hate the way in which their alignment is reflected in what they're wearing, where we saw May go from dark blacks and purples to white, and then we saw Osha go from white gray over to black. And then it's like, okay, Maze went from the dark side to the light side, and then Osha's flipped over from the light side over to the dark side. Um, but the decision to essentially just wipe her mind and then let the Jedi essentially take her, I can understand narratively the reason as to why we chose to do this, because essentially she gets a second chance where she doesn't have to live with the guilt or the rage or the hatred or the longing for her sister in any way, shape, or form. She's able to basically kind of sort of just live her own life. But I kind of feel as though she's dealt a shitty hand because we don't know what the Jedi are going to do with her, especially since Venestra's like, I need your help to find somebody. Which ends up being Kymer because now we discover that Kymer is essentially her former Padawan, and that scar on his back is from a wound that she herself inflicted on him. Questions abound. Are we going to get a season two? Who the fuck knows? I'm hoping. I'm really, really hoping that we get a season two because there are a lot of things that are just kind of sort of left up in the air. But if Disney hasn't come out and said that we're getting a season two now, at the end of it, I don't think we're going to be getting a season two in any way, shape, or form. I feel as though these characters' stories might just be wrapped up in a book, or they may be wrapped up in like a comic or something else that doesn't cost $180 million to make, that has a lower yield. Because I think the viewership for this is the lowest. I think the viewership for this is the lowest it's ever been. Um, hold on. Let's see. Let's see if we can find the viewership ratings for this. Ba ba ba. Okay, hold on. Hold up. Wait a minute. So we got, I think they did it in minutes for the Nielsen viewership in minutes. So Mandalorian season 2, 1,032 million minutes. Episode 2, 955, 873. Book of Boba Fett, Mandalorian season 3. Within the 3 episodes, it spiked back up to higher than what it was during season 2. Kenobi was really high. Within 3 episodes, it kind of remained around the same. Ahsoka kind of sort of dropped first 2 episodes and then 487 million. Acolyte's not looking good. Acolyte is lower than Ahsoka was during its 3 episode window, and within those following 3 episodes being released, there were even less times being viewed, which means currently it was watched less than Andor. I think Ahsoka had the better run long term, especially towards the end when you started getting to like the Anakin Skywalker stuff and the Balin Skull stuff in the final episodes with Ezra coming back and stuff like that. It definitely spiked really high, but it looks like the Acolyte kind of just nosedived, cratered. So I don't think we're gonna get a season 2. I think that if Disney was going to announce a season 2, we would have already gotten that announcement. We would have gotten that announcement maybe like 2 weeks ago. But the fact that we have not gotten that announcement means that it's definitely not going to happen. So a lot of these questions may never be answered. So I don't know how to feel about that. Actually, I do know how I feel about that. I don't care. The show is okay. Like I said, half of the show was decent. It introduced some really, really cool elements, but at the exact same time, there was just a bunch of stuff in it that I did not like or enjoy. A lot of it had to do with the storytelling and the acting, but we'll see. It's a watch and wait. Let me know what you guys think about the Acolyte, just overall in general, from beginning to end. How do you feel about it? Comment down below. Let me know, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.